Oh man, that feels good to sit down. I'm actually on an island off the coast of BC right now, and I'm just completing up a large new large new home that I was a subcontractor involved in as a subcontractor, and it's what a long haul this has been. Woo! And of course, I'm too stubborn to hire a few people to come over and finish up the tail end for me. I just do it myself. I don't know why. And I'm about to go head out to the west coast and get the boat all cleaned up, get it in the water, Barkley Sound, and get into it. So I got time right now. I'm gonna get right into this. I'm gonna read a couple emails sent in while I got time here. All right. And yeah, let me get into this right away and read a couple of these to make sure I do, because I got a burning urge to hit the road and get home. Listen to this. Man, I wasn't gonna do this. I'm sure you get that a lot. You mentioned the small struggle in reading the stuff out loud when it's grammatically foobar, so I read this to myself a couple times in case you share. Now that I appreciate. Thank you for that. I found solace in hearing so many stories similar to my own, and I turned the page. At least I thought I turned the page. The truth is, I was not at peace. The negative impact on my life for no known reasons were immense within the last 2 years. If it weren't for a good wife, I don't know what shape I'd be in. Dude, I turned into a hard boozer for a stint while trying to get my head straight after one particular incident. That's not me. I've since kicked it. And good for you. Good for being strong. And remember, it's all a choice, man. And good for you. I don't know how to keep this short, so I'm not going to try very hard to shorten it up. I used to think your videos were to get this shit out there about these efforts, and recently realized for some people like myself, it's more to get it off your chest. Okay, there's a pile of float planes going by. If you guys can hear them, sorry about the back noise, but they're endless. I have a pretty big chest, dude. My friends back home call me the vanilla gorilla. At 5'10 and 315 pounds, I'm not scared of shit, man. I'm not trying to sound cocky, but I spend my whole life getting bigger, faster, and stronger in the woods. I grew up rolling boulders down the mountain with friends just to test ourselves. My size and strength will come into play later. I was a registered strongman competitor in PA, and I'll send you pics of my registration and competition history for fun. I was raised where the southern tier region of New York State meets the northern tier region of PA. This is good country, brother. Rich forests and beautiful mountains that you'd probably call hills considering where you live. I've actually been in northern New York a few times, Syracuse-ish. I've been in the Poconos of Pennsylvania. I'm familiar with the forests out there. It's a pretty cool area. But there is a wonderfully large amount of un-F territory here with sparsely populated areas. People here have hundreds or thousands of acres, and some of it gets rough. We're rough. We ran to the mountains for deer and took turkey on the river flats. Beautiful waterfalls right next to the dinky trailer I lived in at the base of a mountain. Our high school football rivals would only graduate around 60 kids a year on average. Up until a year and a half ago, I spent more time in the woods alone at night than anyone I know personally. I know Pennsylvania and what's in it. There is no bumbling bear, running deer, rabbit cry, coon fart, or owl screech that could shake me because I'm in tune with what people typically know are out here. Over the course of the last 2 years, I slowly realized I might not be the baddest effing thing in the woods here. In fact, I was flat out wrong. I didn't know that until I moved. I moved to the southeast area of Pennsylvania for work. Down here is much more populated. I can't stand that. I'm a welder fabricator by trade. I became a foreman in the decent-sized shop from 2016-ish until the mandated shutdowns a few months back. I'd lost myself in work for the first couple of years and became fairly obsessed with a 75, 90-hour work week every week. I regulated my own time so there was nobody to tell me to go home. That's my personality. If you're going to do something, then you better not quit until you're empty. My tank was getting low after a couple of years, and I needed to get outside and reconnect a bit, on weekends at least. I'm lucky enough to live right next to several state parks. One is less than 2 miles away. Hell yeah. I love fishing. I started slaunch hunting hard again. I love fishing, and I started slaunch hunting hard again. I didn't want any 3-pounders, though. I wanted the she-piggies, the lunkers. This means trial and error and different methods at precise moments. Weather is a massive part of this process, as you well know. I started to find that the big girls hit later and they wanted topwater. I mean between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. at this one particular area. Sure, I could get decent fish all day with a Texas rig or a frog, but true slaunch donkey bites at the night on a buzzbait or whopper plopper. I was doing this all year round for almost 2 straight years. I'll send along pics and maps with incident locations for credibility's sake and give you the whole picture. I'll also send you a list of details I'd rather you kept to yourself in the event that you read all this and share any at all. You can share anything you want with Dave if you like, but I don't have any physical proof, so I doubt he'd benefit. Only my experiences. All this shit eventually led me to this research, then to you. It took me a while to realize that the man is a dead-ass real deal and a straight shooter. That realization is a new level of what the F for anyone considering this insane amount of work he's done to shed light on the darkest areas. If you don't respond or share, I think I'll feel better the second I hit send anyway. I don't know why I feel that way, but I do. It reminds me of the same human aspect when you talked about how people who won't speak about something right after it happens. It's like the other end of the same spectrum regarding human nature. Backstory complete. If you need more information, just ask. I'll help if I can. As you read the incidents themselves, you need to keep in mind that I didn't have any energy of interest in Sasquatch or the tendencies like throwing shit, the epping screaming, the hush talking, the stalking, etc. If I knew 2 years ago what I know now, I would have reacted to these things very differently or been able to avoid it entirely. Isn't that what this is also about, though? Educating and destigmatizing this shit? I'll spare theatrics as much as possible for these since it's already drawn out. Here it goes. Incident number 1, the splash. Saturday night, approximately 8:30 p.m. in the fall of 2018, the last people in the entire lake area, from the boaters to hikers in the parking lot area, had cleared out about an hour and a half prior. I was ripping a new buzzbait for topwater and tinkering with a new underwater jig called a rage blade, since I always bring 2 rods. It makes a lot of noise underwater, and it's easy for the bass to find when combined with a soft, stinky creature bait trailer. When I think back, I realize the woods were dead silent. Not a peep besides my buzzbait. I probably chalked it up to that time of year. Everything was hunkering down for winter. The splash couldn't have been anything other than a small boulder, not a rock, like the 200, 300 pounders I was lifting in the picture I sent you. I'll lift and throw these damn things for exercise and fun, so I know what it takes. This thing must have been chucked from the top of the dike because there weren't any loose rocks on the far side of the cove I was in, and it didn't hear anything moving anywhere near me. Nothing. That means it was walked over to that point or launched from that 50 yards or more. Nothing can do that, right? You need a goddamn trebuchet. I know full well that even a deer can sound like a hippo when it hops through the water in the dark. I've heard it many times when they get spooked and dart across the stream. The area the splash came from was also one of the deepest areas of the lake with a steep drop-off. Splash isn't even the word. You could hear the deep water wave sound that only comes from a massive disruption of water surface by something far denser than water or tree limbs. We've all heard a big rock fall in the water, and the satisfying bellow it makes before the time the rock hits the surface of the water and, for a split second, pushes the surface down below the surface plane, and when the rock finally breaks through the surface of water, and water envelopes the top of the rock with a watery crash. It sounds dumb as hell to break it down that far, but think about it. Picture it. I've had a lot of time to think about it and went as far as watching video specials about water displacement. Hear it in your head and multiply that by a effing 100. I shit you not. If you actually heard the sound, you would hear this kind of splash before you'd not recognize it as anything normal. It was too immense. It was a deep groan from the water that lasted forever because of how much water it must have pushed aside by the boulder that hit it. Baloosh! And I was effing out of there. The crazy part? That's the crazy part. Why? Why did I run so instantaneously? I didn't even know there was something there I should be afraid of. And I naturally ripped my lure out of the water. I didn't reel it in. I ripped that thing off the water in one whip and somehow caught the thing like a ninja. I was instantly heightened somewhat at that moment. I grabbed my tackle bag and second pole with one movement and went through the woods to my truck so fast I heard nothing but the wind across my ears. I got in the truck, chucked my bag and tangled messes in the back, started it up and turned the lights on in one fluid move and slammed it in reverse, only to correct it forward in the direction I came from so I could see the tree line and splash direction. Why? Because of instincts that I wasn't acknowledging at that point. I understood my fight instincts well. There's a different one entirely, and thank God it's powerful enough to take over my so-called logical processes when I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand that feeling for quite a few incidents, if I'm being honest. It's alarming how much we basically de-evolved to a point we can almost totally ignore our basic instincts. And that is a fact, and that is a piss off to me. That's something I think about a lot, is how we have been dumbed down, right, from our natural skills. I believe you call it the sixth sense or simply your gut telling you something. I remember taking a Snapchat about it and saying it to my siblings. The younger ones convinced me to get the app so we can all stay connected. I'm in the middle of 6 kids and we're all in close knit. I sent a snap of myself pretty much making fun of myself for the whole thing. At this point in time, I knew what I heard. What I should have been asking was why and how. Incident number 2, lights, whispers, and motors. I still went to the lake at night regularly. My wife would go with me for catfish, often enough to call her an awesome wife, but not near as often as I was going. I got obsessed with evening fishing for donkers, and it was well worth it to go a week or more of nothing and then pull out a 6-pounder. I was going after work and almost every weekend. I felt alive again, and I'm not too proud to say that ego has a bit to do with it. What an awesome thing to banter about and hold over the heads of your brothers and friends during a time of year that even the most dedicated anglers are only fishing for Black Friday bargains. This is where things start to meld together and I don't even realize it. If you want to hear more about the lights in detail, it can be a separate email. I'm only mentioning it because even though I'm new to this topic in general, it seems a lot of circles associate these bright orb buggers to Sasquatch, and I don't know enough to make my own assumptions there. At least I know enough to know I don't know. Maybe it's something you can elaborate on in a video. I'd love to hear what you think. Anyway, if I saw a light in the sky, I thought it was odd and started to record what I could since it became frequent. I didn't know if I was a hotspot or if it's just from being near wide open sky at night, when you're on a lake. Anyone that went fishing with me there saw them as well, and there's no denying them since I found local reports about them from time to time on YouTube. If nothing else, it was fun stuff to pass the time between bites, and who doesn't love to just look up the beautiful night sky anyway, right? After a while, I stopped filming these things because I started to hear what I assumed were whispers and sometimes straight up hushed voices some nights. I could not ever tell what they were saying. It was like listening to Charlie Brown's Teacher. You knew there was conversation, but for some reason you just can't make the words out. Looking back, I think I stopped recording the lights just so I could pay more attention to the unsettling idea that a group of people wanted to, dare I say, spy on me. For a bit I chalked it up to people night fishing for caddies, since it was a good spot for it. The issue was always from the far side in the park. As time went on, it was more unsettling because the park is not open to campers from October to spring. Gates lock every night at dusk. No vehicles in the parking lot on my side for hours, if at all by the time I'd start hearing stuff. The weird part is that if people were over there, it meant they hiked in from a ways away. Not an odd concept, but you're not allowed to be in there anyway. Even if they hiked in, frequently I knew a shortcut, there was no reason for it. Everyone knew where the channel cat and the bullheads were, and it was the opposite side of the individuals. Anyways, always seeming to be so why... Everyone knew where the channel cat and bullheads were, and it was the opposite side of the individuals. Always seemed to be so, why risk it? Always seemed to be so, why risk it? It's not like I always took their spot because they have been there before me, or I wouldn't have seen or heard them making their way over there. I even wondered briefly if it was a couple park rangers who had nothing better to do in off hours, and I thought it was nuts or suspicious for always being there at night. Maybe they thought I was up to no good since the parking lot did have issues being a remote location in between two populated areas. On several occasions, I heard what I thought was the motor of a golf cart or a small trail buggy, but starting and stopping, again and again. It reminded me of a gas-powered golf cart, how you hit the gas and the motor turns on, let off the gas and the motor stops, again and again. This was the only explanation for the sound I could find for myself at the time. But back home, everyone and their brother had a quad, dirt bike, or well-to-dos had a side-by-side ATV. There was no denying the deep, muffled rumble of a motor. On, off, what the F. This contributed to the unlikely spying ranger theory because they're the only ones that have a machine like that in there. I talk to the rangers regularly, so I doubt this very much. So I doubted this option very much. We had a good relationship, and I'd never asked him about it because by this point, I'm already feeling a bit crazy. This is where I don't realize that these small occurrences are adding up to my uneasy demeanor changing during that time period. When I was there, I was straight up paranoid while fishing that spot. Trying to make sense of all this as time goes on really only makes you more paranoid because you eventually realize you're being watched. There's no denying that feeling. There was constant sense of alertness when I was there, and it grew so slightly over time that I didn't take my own hints. I believe I was being given hints too. I've seen a dilapidated van parked there running late at night, a homeless druggie living in a van, or maybe a drug dealer's waiting for me to leave, someone wanting to rob me or break into my truck. Not super common there, but it does happen there. Couldn't be. I would have seen people pull in, and no thug is going to hike miles night after night scouting me. And thugs wouldn't scare me because I finished a hell of a lot of fights as a bouncer through college. I wasn't afraid of group scuffles. Just get in there. People don't fight fair in remote places at night either, so I usually had a pistol on me, or in the truck close by since I started migrating closer and closer to the truck over time. I now fish much further from the splash spot for some reason. Brave, not stupid. This was taking my peace from me and I began to act out. At this point, I can say I was finally on edge. I started saying shit back. Why not? Worst case is someone asks me what the F the problem is and I apologize for the misunderstanding and move on. I effing wish that happened with all my heart. The voices just stopped at the first time. The voices just stopped the first time I shouted. At first I thought that was it, since I called them out and they didn't respond, like, I know you're there, idiots. What are you going to do anyway? What are you doing anyway? And they can just F off now, right? Nope. Whispers come back shortly after, but from further down the way, closer to the dike that lead to my side. Goodbye. Gun or not, I don't need bullshit like that. I said before that I had no problem handling trouble that came my way, but that doesn't mean I look for to welcome it. I left. I didn't go back for a couple of weeks because I was bugged the hell out. Now I was a little jumpy away from the lake too. It was my spilling over into the rest of my life. Why would anybody be watching me like that? Is it just there, or am I always followed? And what the hell for? I'm a different kind for sure, but I'm not quite that interesting. Was it something I filmed? I deleted every damn video I took of that lake, and that wasn't a fish or a friend. I deleted video of lights and anything I thought was weird, and I have no idea why. I was still going back to the lights as a factor because it seemed at the time the only weird thing going on there. So that's got to be it, right? If I film some top secret drones, I don't want to put it out there, you know? Don't out your own people. That's the step that covers our own asses. This is how bugged out I got after a little while. I was done with that place. I didn't go there for the better part of a month, maybe longer than a month. I thought about the experiences constantly. But there's a stint of odd weather the winter before this last one when the worst of this is going on. The weather was a rare chance to have some spring during the summer. I was walking past that $400 medium action rod and bait caster rig in the garage one day, and it was too much for me. It was enough to cloud the issue. It's easy to tell yourself it's not a big deal and you can handle it after some time. I couldn't stay away. There was a warm front hitting and conditions may be looking good for a small window. I heard the weather was going to turn back and total shit with freezing and rain in a day or so, and that the temp would drop back down. It sounded to me like there'd be bass conditions for that small window. Incident 3. Help me please, help me please. The screaming. I went back to the lake. By this time I'd figured I'd play it safe as possible. I parked close to where I was fishing. I stayed close to the truck while I fished. I had a sidearm, hot coffee, headlamp, flashlight, lantern. As I stayed far from the tree line, I was practically fishing from the effing parking lot. I set up a catfish rig to throw in while I hit the topwater, where I thought it'd be best. Obviously the best place in the woods near the cove, but that was out for me after dark. Done. I had a line in, and I was tinkering with different topwater baits, and I heard what I believed to be a blood-curdling, bone-chilling, piercing scream for help. The strongest sound, man. I can't explain the power of this voice that cut through the air. It kept going, help me, please help. Help me, please. I dropped my shit and racked the slide before the rod hit the ground and walked toward the screams behind me. The screams were past the truck across the road and maybe in the tree line. I had 20 black talons in my canic, plus a spare mag in my pocket. I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I can embrace the use of that kind of a rush in intense situations, but this was so different. Dude, I felt like a cold wind was blowing on my bare bones while I headed toward that sound. At first, I instantly felt like I had to save someone's life. I had to save a woman. It was a woman in distress at first thoughts, and I had to save her from whatever was chasing or attacking her, right? Anyone would, especially me. In fact, this is probably the only effing thing that got me to set aside my gut fear and caution and go in the woods there at night. To save someone. To save a life. This is probably the only bait I would ever bite on. Are you picking up on what I'm throwing down, brother? I charged the tree line hard, but for some reason I stopped dead in my effing tracks at my truck. I can't say that I couldn't move. It was more that I wouldn't move. When I thought about what was happening, something in me knew full well that it wasn't a person, and here's why. It was too loud. It was too sharp, too strong. It resonated in the air and in my chest way too hard. It was enough to almost hurt your ears, and it was crushing in general. The sound hurt me somehow in a way I can't explain. I screamed back, "Where are you?" And the shit stopped. I started the truck, put the lights on the tree line, and got out of the truck to have a listen. Nothing. You couldn't drive a pin up my ass with a 10-pound sledgehammer at this moment. I called the local cops, but they were closed, and I didn't call the state cops because at that point I knew it was an effing bunk call. There was no cry for help. It was a bait call. It was a turkey call. Or like using a rabbit box to call in a coyote. This time, though, I wasn't the one waiting in the dark for something to come in and take the bait. I got in the truck, went home, pegged my fish and shit under the corner, and hugged my wife. It wasn't worth the terror anymore. Looking back, I'm so glad I left because from what I've looked into recently, it tells me that my 9mm wouldn't have helped much. Even if I had 40 total rounds in my 2 mags, I don't know if I could have overcome what I believe was there. I only go during the day when the parks are open during the spring and summer, and I carry a .357 Magnum with flat-nosed bullets. Oh yeah, remember the motor sounds? I forgot about those because I've dragged this on, but our brain is a weird thing. Sometimes it finds the closest plausible match for what information is given to process, right? It makes sense of things with the knowledge you have up to that point. That wasn't a motor, man. It was this thing, this being. It was either closer than I want to think about, and that was its regular breathing, or that MFer was periodically snarling at me. I have just now begun to act like myself again, and I've kind of tried to bring the topic up to some friends and family, but I can't follow through with it. They do not seem like they will understand. My wife knows it's all real, and I don't hide shit from her, and she knows me well. She loves me because she knows she's always safe with me no matter what, and she's never seen me speak like that. I'm that much more protective when we're in the woods now, and we have some strict rules we stick to in the woods. Processes. Things we don't do alone anymore. She had no doubts, and she was there for me 100%. I spare details with her so she isn't afraid as best I can. I want her to be cautious, not scared, and she's a smart woman. I need to keep getting back to who I am. I'm going to hit send. Despite my age, I'm not great with technology, so I'll send the pic separately tomorrow since I can't send it with massive attachments. I've been tiptoeing around it all week. I can't stop the chills I have right now. I started typing this 4 days ago. I almost shit a brick when I heard yesterday's account of the rock throwing. I had a feeling like I should just delete all this and move on. I had the splash incident typed for 2 days before the Jeremiah guy had the damn near same effing story of his experience. I'll send you some stuff later. I guess you can share everything, but my name, there wasn't anything super specific. I don't know about sharing the pictures I send you. I'm sending them to you so you have the whole picture and zero doubts. And thanks for sounding that in, man. And I got no problems reading all that. I would have kept reading if it was another 10 pages. Who cares? It's got to be shared, right? Especially you or anybody else out there decides that your experience needs to be shared. It's going to get shared. And there is no way you are alone with that experience. There's no way. There's so many people having the same shit going on when they're camping, hiking, fishing, or doing whatever they are doing outside, right? It's just the way it is. This shit's going down, and it's not stopping, and it's always been going on. And what do you do? What do you do but keep sharing? And eventually the more we share, the more people hear, and the more people that can relate start sharing too. And then the pieces of the puzzle slowly get put together. But I stress to you guys, the key is to stick together with the people, and take the theme, take the topic back away from that small handful of people who have controlled the narrative for too long now. All right. Most of those people haven't even had an experience like many of you have, but somehow, some reason, they managed to get themselves in front of a camera, and they have controlled the narrative, and they have made sure that all of us do not find out all of the absolute facts that are coming up with these topics. And that's what they've been doing, and that's why I call them a bunch of pricks, and amongst other things, right? And rightfully deserved. And so should all you call them the exact same thing. There's nothing worse than having people like the Vanilla Gorilla and myself and others absolutely troubled by what they've experienced and seen, and then have all these pricks somehow get in the position where everybody seems to bring information to them and look for answers from them, when all they're doing is taking in all this information, and they are not sharing it with all of you, honestly. Coincidentally, this is the book. This is the very first one right here, and I had to pry it out of Sarah's hands to bring it with me today. But I don't know how many stories are in here. There's hundreds of experiences in here, and they're written word for word by the people who had them. So I have numerous experiences of my own in this, and as well a handful of experiences from people that I trust in my life, and added to that are the literally hundreds of experiences from all you good-working, hard-working, honest people out there. And that's what it's about. It's about all of us, all right? And until we get the solid answers and explanations for many things, we're just going to have to stick together and not let anybody control us and control the narrative, and speak openly and freely about every single aspect of every single one of these experiences, all right? Because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. There's so much going on. There's so many things that we are not openly educated about from day one, which is absolute bullshit. But we are steadily getting around it. As long as we keep going, right? But anyway, speaking of keep going, I gotta get going. We'll see you on the west coast of British Columbia, west coast of Vancouver Island soon, on the ocean, and maybe we'll do some sharing from out there. Good luck, and be safe out there, and keep on sharing with each other, all right? It's important.